Hi, everyone. Welcome to the third roundtable on Stand Up Against Racism, organized by Volt Europe. My name is Kim Smelter, and I've been hosting these three roundtables, which have been essentially about trying to understand systemic racism, trying to understand how it is experienced at a personal level, but also trying to understand it at a societal level. In this third roundtable, we are at the end of the trilogy, and as you know, just like in Star Wars, the third trilogy, the third story is always the best. And we're going to try to do exactly just that to make sure that this one is going to be the best of all of them. What we want to do in this particular episode is very much explore how we all together can come together to try to overcome systemic racism. In the previous roundtables, we talked very much about the raw emotions that is caused and provoked by racism, and essentially how that emotional impact damages the potential of so many people around the world, including in Europe. And in the second roundtable, we very much explored all the different facets and how society actually creates this regime of systemic racism, how it is played out in urban policy, in education, in work, all those different aspects. And of course, we did quite a lot. We covered a lot of different policies. But in this one, we want to try to bring it all together and to really talk a little bit about the practical steps that you can take in order to help break these shackles that prevents so many people to reach their potential. To help me to do this, I have an amazing panel of wonderful women. And it's great that we have a panel of only women actually to talk about this topic. So I hope that you'll be helping me to welcome them. And also, please do use the comment features on the different platforms to let us know if you have any questions. We'll try to get to them in this roundtable and we'll try to answer them as best as we can. This roundtable in particular is really about helping you, to empower you to help others. So hopefully we get to that. Joining me today, I first want to introduce to the roundtable Daniela. Daniela is ex-communications lead and communications advisor here at Volt Europe, and she's also the communication strategy for Euphoria. She is a member of Volt Belgium, so also from the same chapter as me, so it's great to have somebody who's local on the panel. Daniela, welcome.
Thank you very much, Kim. It's lovely to be here, and I'm very much looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have today, which I'm sure is going to bring a lot of positive action.
Thanks, Daniela, and welcome. Next up, I want to welcome Lina to the panel. Lina is the ex-diversity expansion lead for Volt Europe. She's also one of the ex-leads for the COFI campaign, so the Conference on the Future of Europe, and she's also a member of Volt Germany. Lina, welcome to the session.
Thanks very much, Kim. Also very excited that this conversation is happening and very honored to be a part of it. Looking forward also.
Thanks, Lina. And last but certainly not least, I'm really pleased to be also able to welcome Anita. Anita is the founder of the Facebook group Black Lives Talk. And that Facebook group, if you don't know it, has over 30,000 members. So it's really a movement and a group to watch. And that movement is all about empowering Black women essentially to reach the next step. And she's based in the Netherlands, but the movement is aiming to be global. So of course, from Volt Europe, it only made sense for us to welcome you as well. So Anita, welcome to the roundtable.
Thank you very much, Kim. Thank you that I could join this meeting and that I could add something to this movement that is happening right now. And it's actually Black Ladies Talk, the group, the Facebook group. So if you want to join, we welcome.
Super. Well, ladies, welcome. And let's get stuck in because like the previous roundtables, we know that time is always ticking really fast. And I think the first question I wanted to ask you guys, and I think I want to try to link kind of back to the previous roundtables. And I can understand from somebody who's listened to the previous roundtables that you can kind of go, oh my God, there's so many efforts to deal with. There's so many different policies that we have to tackle. We don't have that much time. There's COVID-19. The world's going to go into a recession. Is this really the priority? And you kind of get into this kind of issues paralysis where you just don't know where to start. And I kind of wanted to ask the three of you, in essence, kind of what would be your advice for somebody who wants to actually, take steps to make positive change on this topic? What can be a first step for them so that they don't feel that paralysis prevents them from doing anything? Anita, would you like to start us off?
Yes, thank you. Yes, well, I think a very good point to start is start with listening. listening to people, what they have to say, people of color, and when it's about discrimination, listen to people, go talk to people, listen to them, but please don't ask about their experiences and which experience made them hurt the most, because that's really frustrating to talk about that particular part. But just start to listen to them on the solution. Start talking about the solution, and listening is very powerful. And it's I think it's the best way to start, because from all these discussions you can connect on a total different level than before. And I think the big difference is you will listen on a total different level and in a total different way. And it's also very important, if you want to go to action, do something that fits for you. Do something authentic. And if demonstration is not your thing, when you hear something that's wrong, talk about people, ask people why do they say these things, and if they are aware of what they're adding to this discussion and to the discrimination. I think that is the smallest step for people to think and to start. And it's so important for people to have the real conversation.
And I want to bring Daniela right into that, because when Volt was essentially crafting its response, we actually organized a call with some of the Volt members who are of African descent, in essence, to try to understand kind of what could Volt do as a movement, which was positive and constructive. And Daniela, one of the points that she was trying to really push is precisely that point of listen first. So yeah, Daniela, I mean, I don't know if there's anything to add to that, but I know it's certainly something that you also feel quite passionate about.
I would just expand on it, and I would, listening not only allows you to educate yourself, but it allows you to start practicing empathy. And I think that this is something that we have to be very, very aware of. I think when we have that paralysis, that we think this is such a huge issue, like how do I even start to get involved? That's a moment where you need to stop and just think of the people that actually live this issue. Like some people have the privilege of seeing the issue from outside and get overwhelmed by it. Just think of the people that actually have to live the issue on their own skin. And taking that into account, then just breathe and remember, okay, I can do something. I mean, we are one humanity. And as such, the plight of someone is my plight. And if I can do something, no matter how small, because I think Anit is very correct in saying you should do something that is authentic to you, something that feels natural to you. Otherwise, I think it's very hard for you to commit to it. And being anti-racist takes commitment. And it's a commitment that you can't do just, today it's cool because it's a trend and tomorrow it's not anymore. So I think listening is the first step also, because once you listen, you're able to actually start thinking of actions. You take this whole picture and now you can see it in little pieces and see, okay, where can I plug myself in? So I think that is the first step. Listen and educate yourself. There's so many resources out there on YouTube, on Netflix, that you can just read. You can see if maybe you don't have a community where you can go and listen, there's an online community that you can definitely listen to.
Yeah, thanks, Daniela. And I want to bring Lina as well into this conversation, because as those of you heard in the introduction, Lina was leading our diversity team for some time. And I think Lina had to go through that journey. And I think people would be quite interested to hear kind of your story in terms of how you got involved in this, and also what were your first steps to precisely do kind of what Daniela and Anita have been advising.
Yeah. So you're asking about my personal steps, and I guess those are really some things that I can also recommend, especially because, especially to people who are active involved, but not only, but especially if you're active involved on a local level or on any level whatsoever, is that you might also want to think about who do you want to go to and talk to and ask. Because not everyone might be willing to talk to you about it at every moment. So what we did in the diversity team, and what I can always recommend, is that I'm very sure in your city or on the national or European level, you will find organizations that actually organize themselves to articulate what are important issues, what are solutions, and they're very much prepared to share that knowledge with you. So I would really, especially as local teams, find out who is active in like political self-representation in your town, and reach out to them, ask if you can come meet them, if maybe somebody can come speak at your local team. And then when they agree to do that, also I would say be prepared to listen and not talk, but to listen and let what people tell you sink in. Because it might not always be logical to you or understandable to you in the first moment, but that doesn't mean it's not valid. So yeah, that would be also an important first step.
Thanks, Lina. And actually, it leads me into the next question, which I wanted to really raise, which is also kind of when we talk about racism, or when we talk about the other forms of discrimination as well, the intersectionality of the discriminations and things like that. There's sometimes, and maybe sometimes it's also those of us who are in the movement essentially might also provoke that a little bit. This feeling that only the people who experience it should be allowed to talk about it. And I wanted to kind of ask the panel about that and that feeling as well, to say, do you think that is actually the case, that essentially only Blacks should be able to talk about Black racism? Or do you think that there is actually a way for others to also speak out loud? Should they speak out loud? Because we've been talking about the fact that we should listen before you speak. So I'd be curious kind of what your advice would be if you do want to actually speak. Should you speak, or should you actually wait for somebody else to do so? Danielle, you've been nodding your head. I don't know if you want to take a first shot at this one.
Sure. I think everyone must talk about it, but I think as a person that has not experienced racism or discrimination, you should not inject your emotions into it. I think you should not tell people how they should feel about experiences that they have gone through, because that's something that I sometimes have witnessed, and it's that allies try to inject their own emotions and their own opinions into how someone experienced something that is so negative. And I think that is an absolute no. I think it's imperative that we all talk about the existence of discrimination, of racism, the different layers in which our society is plugged to it, and how can we get out of it. And because of that, I think everyone needs to talk about it. It's just about how you're talking about it, depending on where you stand in this issue. That is, I think, what people need to wonder. Not, should I talk about it? Because yes, you should. You should be talking about this. But how are you talking about it? Are you trying to change a system? Are you trying to say this is wrong and I have been perpetuating this in this way, directly or indirectly? Or are you trying to tell someone, well, yeah, you live that, but? Because that's very different.
I think it's a really great way to think about it, which Daniela kind of offers to us. And I mean, Anita, I think we know when we talk about the intersectionality of different discriminations, of course, Black women, that's a very different kind of enchilada compared to other women, but then also compared to Black men as well, and those types of things. I mean, do you find echoing kind of what Daniela is saying? And do you think particularly for Black women, is this the case?
Yes. Yes, I think if you really want to add something, because I totally agree with what Daniela is saying, and I couldn't say it any more better. And if you really want to add something, if you really want to change something, really skip that part. So yeah, this did happen, but it was a joke. It wasn't, they did not meant it that way, or whatsoever reason you're hurting why people did what they did. That is not interesting. We are really looking for that empathy, for the feeling to, I'm human too. And I can have my space. I can breathe. You will let me breathe. Because when talking about George Floyd, I can't breathe. It's like it's so meaningful. It's so incredible meaningful. It is like these sentences are so important. It's the physical part, it's the mental part, it's breathing in life, breathing in your work as a professional, as a student, as a human being, breathing, being able to breathe, being able to live your life. That's what it's all about. So yes, when you're talking about it, really want to add something, listen and talk. Talk to really add something and to really change things, or else don't talk and just listen.
Yeah, thanks for that, Anita. And I hope that the audience is hearing very much the importance of think before you act, listen before you act, listen to the emotions that are being expressed. I think all of those things are so important, particularly in this topic. It's also one of the reasons why we structured the roundtable the way we did, to really highlight first the individual experience, that racism isn't just a statistic. It is lived, it is experienced, it hurts. It hurts our friends, it hurts our family, it hurts our sister, it hurts our mother. And that is why we took the route we took. And I think it's what you're saying really highlights that point. Just to bring Lina back into the conversation, I knew that also at the beginning, Lina was reacted quite frustrated. I think I would say would be a fair term in terms of the way some of the people were reacting and trying to be allies. And I'd be curious, kind of, Lina, kind of, do you think that things have evolved since those initial frustrations, or are there things which you're hearing from Daniela and Anita which you find echo with?
I think yes. I definitely also, having been involved for 2 years now, and also with all the developments that we had just globally and in our societies in the last 2 years, I feel that many people are learning. And I've been seeing lately that many more people internally are speaking up and taking on the responsibility to call out people who are saying things that are hurtful or just not correct, or just putting things in, like, try to put things in a better perspective that is actually constructive and bringing people forward. So actually, I think that things are changing, yeah, to some extent.
And before we started this roundtable, and I think perhaps it's a really good case example, I think also, it brings me to my kind of my next question for you. And it's really, how can someone who hasn't experienced racism, so has had the privilege of not having to deal with that wonderful can of worms, shall we say, how can they be a helpful ally? And would you say there is actually a way to be a bad ally and to make things worse? And what can people who genuinely want to break the cycle, what can they meaningfully do? So kind of, if you had like a 3-step program essentially to become the best ally possible, what would it look like? What do you advise friends who are like, okay, now I'm sick of this, I want to do something? What would you suggest them as kind of the first 3 steps? You know, once they've done the listening, hopefully, what is the next step after that? Anita, do you want to start us off on this one?
Yes, that's okay. I think if you want to start, so the first step is listen, and like Daniela said, when you're listening, you will come to your action that fits for you. Like in the other countries, in the Netherlands at this moment, we are having the demonstrations, and if that works for you, you should join it. If that fits for you, you should join it. But if that doesn't fit for you, ask yourself, what fits with me? What can I do? Is it something when I'm going to do my sports, or is it something when I'm going to work? Can I add something there? Can I make my colleagues aware of what is happening? And just starting the discussion from other sides. And as an ally, I think that's also important, because if you look at, for example, in the offices, people can get hurt there very badly, and it's something you can't touch. And I think if you want to be a good ally, you can make it visible. You can make it visible by being an ally. And sometimes it's not for the people of color to start discussion, or for the LGBTQ to start a discussion, but somebody else to start that discussion, that it is wrong what's happening. And also what they see, they mention it, and they put it on the agenda. And also one important thing, it starts, the first action is a start, and you have to continue. So if it should be a 3-steps program, first one is listening. The second one is have a conversation, whether it's on your work, on school, or whatever you are, have that conversation. And if you see something that's happening that's wrong, you could first, if you see it, check it with the person. And then when the person confirms it, just talk about it. Open the conversation about the topic. And then from there on, continue. Don't make it like a one-time thing, but continue. Put it on the agenda for maybe every month or every week, but keep on continuing until you notice there are changes. And these changes, well, it's not in what people are saying, but it's these changes, you can see them in the behavior of people. And you can check it with the people who are the victims of their behavior.
Yeah, so it's not just a case of just changing your Facebook profile picture and then you're done. You've done your good deed for the for the year, and you can kind of move something else.
That's not enough.
And Lina, I kind of want to bring you in on this because I know that you've tried to raise visibility of this issue with Involved. I think you do it as well in your workplace and those types of things. And sometimes you'll try to do that and you get no echo and those types of things. So have you found that when you do that, when you speak up as a white woman, that people react in a positive way, or have you found things to be frustrating? So, and if things haven't gone the way, what have you done to kind of persevere in essence?
Just keep on doing it. Do it and do it again and do it again, and you will talk to people and they will be like, yeah, super important, and then move on. And I think really this is also the changes I was referring to earlier, is that if enough people do it again and again and again and again, then the message might eventually come through, especially if it's white people that say it again and again. So yeah.
And just to add on, would you have kind of like a 3-step plan, particularly for white people in essence who want to join in on the movement correctly?
So I mean, I absolutely support the 3 steps that Anita just said, but I think what we can maybe also do, for me, it would be like listen, understand, and then support. So between the listening and the being able to support, I think is a phase of understanding. And this is actually where the big work is for us, because, yeah, I think we are, all of this discussion that we're having, this discussion roundtables, are coming from a place that most of white people are completely unaware of what systemic racism is. So to get yourself to understanding that, and also because it's really a process and it's connected with many different emotions, and to work through that, I think can build a strong base to then support Black people and also speak up in situations. I think you can actually draw the power from that process of understanding.
You're muted, Kim.
Yeah, indeed. Danielle, would you have anything to add? Kind of this 3-step program that we're building and essentially preparing for anybody who wants to be the best ally ever.
3 steps is quite short, but if we have to have 3 steps, I would say listen. Again, it's the foundation of everything you want to do in this topic. Listen, then educate yourself, because again, there is plenty of information that you can access for free. So it's not like you have to put your hand in your wallet. No, it's out there for you to educate yourselves, to keep understanding, as Lena said, because it's very important to understand. Support. You need to support. There's so many organizations that are being agents of change, that are actively trying to change structural racism. So support them. And just the fourth one, I know it's three, but a fourth one, diversify your environments. I genuinely think that we must diversify our environments. If maybe it's hard for you to diversify your physical environment, diversify your digital environment. There's so many artists, platforms, writers, series that have diversity at the core of it. And I feel like once people start consuming things that diversify their, let's say, environments, their biases maybe start loosening up, and they also start connecting much more to the humanity of people that maybe they're not used to see or interact with.
So that's so important. Actually, it's a nice segue to something which we wanted to kind of cover as a panel, which is around kind of, so some of the feedback we've gotten from the first roundtables is that on the one hand, it's been eye-opening. So it goes back to kind of Lina's point that, you know, one of the things we need to start doing is to start understanding all the facets of this, how it came to be, why it is the case, the history behind it, why people react in such a raw emotional state, all those types of things. So there is that question discomfort. But one of the things which we were saying kind of at the beginning of, Lina asked a question, which I thought was really an interesting way of crystallizing kind of the issue, the issue is the wrong word, kind of, but crystallizes the need of this approach that we're championing here around kind of, so what term should we Europeans be using to provide, you know, a politically correct is again the wrong term, but provide a sensitive way of calling Black people or Africans of European descent, or Europeans of African descent rather, you know, what is there a right term, or is that actually not the question to be asked, and should people not be afraid to ask these questions? Anita, Daniela, feel free to answer at the same time even if you want. But what would you say? Is there actually like a term, the single term which we can use, everybody can use safely, and they know that they're being sensitive to the issue?
Should I go? I mean, I think that that's a question that again goes back to be empathic and listen. For example, sometimes I have conversations and people tell me, I don't feel comfortable when you use the people of color. I would prefer that you call me a European of African descent, or I would prefer if you use Black people. I don't have a problem. Again, listen, don't be afraid of being told I'm not comfortable with these. Change it, you change it, and you continue a conversation. I mean, so long as you're being respectful, so long as your intention is to listen, to educate yourself, to be empathic, and to do something positive, I think you shouldn't be afraid of maybe finding yourself in a position when someone's telling you, well, I don't like that, because that's okay, and you change and you move on.
Yes, I totally agree, Daniela. That's the best way to act. People will tell you if they don't like something, and there's not one name that's proper for everyone or nice for everyone. It's very, I don't know, it's very personal. It's a really personal thing. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting to highlight as well that just because one person's comfortable with the term, another person might not be as well. So there isn't just the one Black view. It is a heterogeneous view as well. There's also, you know, every colony and every colonizer had a very different relationship to one another as well. And as a result of that, also the names that we use and the names that we choose to use and the names that we're comfortable with are very different from one diaspora to another. And there are many different diasporas as well. So just want to kind of highlight that as well as part of our conversation. I mean, Lina, in terms of kind of when you were embarking on your journey on this whole topic, did you have situations when actually you felt that you perhaps made a misstep and that in fact it was okay, or did you or was it actually, you know, like you said, you kind of just powered through in essence and just stayed an ally in essence?
Oh, I've been uncomfortable so many times. I think that's the core of the whole thing. I think only after a while you start to realize that this is actually where it starts being productive, and that when somebody even cares to point something out to you, that that's actually a very, very good thing, because it gives you a chance to reflect and grow, and reflect on something that was completely normal to you, but is actually part of a racist system that is hurtful to so many people around the globe. So I think from the start, any conversation where people of color, Black people, have cared to point things out to me, I always learned something new. I always learned a new perspective. And then, yeah, over time, you just start appreciating that and actually start seeing it as a gift. Yeah, it gives you an opportunity.
That's really cool. That's all I want to say on that one. That's really awesome. Yeah, maybe we can unpick that a little bit more. The question of discomfort, because I think you feel it, you sense it in every time this conversation comes up. And unfortunately, the George Floyd murder was not the first time we've had these conversations. We've had these conversations in Europe for quite some time. They always feel very unachieved and very unresolved. We maybe sometimes move 2 steps forward and then we always take 1 step back. But I kind of wanted to explore with all three of you a little bit kind of why is there so much discomfort around this particular topic? And we've raised it a little bit in the previous roundtables, but you know, what is it about discomfort? And actually, in some ways, and Lina kind of highlights this, that perhaps discomfort is part of the journey as well. But how do people kind of get beyond that discomfort to the next step of the healing process, in essence? Nita, Daniela, Lina, whoever wants to start on this one. Or does anyone want to start on this
one? Discomfort is part of the journey. If you look at the amount of people who are getting hurt because of discrimination, this discomfort is actually nothing. If you look over time, what happened because of discrimination, this discomfort is nothing. And indeed, when you want to grow, discomfort is also part of it, because you're going to try something new, which is not comfortable. But I think growth isn't always in the comfortable part. It's in the uncomfortable part, in which you try, you fail, and you try again, and you fail. And feedback is a very important part of that. And feedback can feel discomfort, discomfort. It can make you feel discomfort, but it's part of it. It's such a part of it, and it's so important, because if this would feel comfortable, this would have been solved, I think, many centuries ago. And I think this discomfort also comes from somewhere far away. We know it's wrong, but we also most of the time people chose the easy way, and that was comfortable. That felt comfortable. We did not have to deal with it. But the longer you wait, the more discomfort you will feel. And I think that's what's happening. We've waited too long. And that's why people are also tired of explaining and telling what experiences they've had. Because all the times from the first time on until now, you've told it, people did not believe you. People were like, there's nothing. So yeah, this discomfort it's really a part. It is important, but that's also where the growth lies. So I think we need this discomfort. Well, the people, our allies, need this discomfort, because then you feel the difference. Then you will feel the change. Because if it's comfortable, you should really ask yourself if you're doing the right thing. That's what I think.
We've got everybody nodding on our screen, so I think there's certainly cool agreement. I mean, Daniela, Lena, is there anything you would add to that?
I mean, Anita said it perfectly well, and I think Lena has also said it. Discomfort is part of it. This makes me think, for example, a caterpillar, right before it becomes a butterfly, it has to break out of the cocoon. And it's not an easy process, but it needs to go through it to transform into a butterfly. So I think discomfort is just part of it. And what I've experienced so far is that sometimes when people show a discomfort to a topic that makes them uncomfortable, it's more because they don't want to be perceived as a bad person. Because sometimes I feel like people are not afraid to talk about racism, people are afraid to be labeled racists, so they rather stay out of it. And I think that maybe we should disconnect from it, because it's okay, even if maybe some of your opinions might not be the best. Again, through being challenged in them, through observing it, checking your own biases, is the only way that you're going to become a really powerful anti-racist butterfly. So yeah, discomfort for the win.
Nina, anything you would add to that? But it's such a beautiful metaphor, actually, Daniela. It's really well found.
Absolutely, yes. The caterpillar is really, really a great metaphor, actually, because also one thing I just read today, and it puts it in words so well, is that actually also systemic racism makes white people numb of feeling the emotions of real empathy. So, and then we have situations where something is not right, but because we have this numbness, so we are so trained in this numbness, we can't really grasp what is actually going on. So the discomfort when we actually have a look at it, what is uncomfortable here? Why am I uncomfortable? This is actually really what can make us yeah, come out of the cocoon. So yeah, it's actually very productive, and it's a great metaphor. Thank you for that, Daniela.
I mean, I want to perhaps bring a different angle, I guess, perhaps be a bit more agent provocateur. So we talked a little bit about kind of people who are, in essence, are well-meaning. They really want to address the topic in a meaningful way. They completely are, they want to see equality, they want to see an inclusive Europe and those types of things. And I want to kind of pick the slightly less, converted to the cause, so the more skeptics, in essence, who perhaps would say, well, I support your cause, I think your cause is great, but the methods that you've chosen to express your discomfort are things I would disagree with. I disagree with the violent manifestations. I disagree with police officers being attacked because they are doing their job, I agree that we should have a conversation about history, but it's difficult to be having this conversation when you're busy, vandalizing all the statues left, right, and center. So I've wanted to address that, because I think we've seen it also in some of the comments as well. There's kind of this question of, I do want to support the cause, but the way the cause is currently turning, it's becoming very, it's becoming very extreme. Will be another way that some people would say, and I'd be curious what you guys. How you guys would react to that if somebody were to come to you to say that, or is it, again, going back to this question of, this is the part where the discomfort happens, actually. Anita, I think maybe you should start with this particular round if you're up for it. It's an easy question for you.
First thing I would ask that person is, do you really want to be an ally? Do you really want things to change? Because the questions you're asking and the comments you're giving don't seem like it. And actually, the truth is, people are trying for centuries, are trying it in a subtle way, in a friendly way. And at all these moments, we haven't been heard. It's George Floyd had to die. He is one of many. And still, people, if you still come to me to say it's too aggressive the way you want to address this, then I'm really going to ask you, do you really want to be an ally? Do you really want this? I think that's the first thing you have to think of before you want to engage in this. Because at this moment, it doesn't seem like you want to be a part of this. It's more like you're an enemy. And if so, well, stay there until you think you have to change. But I won't change, and I don't think the way this is going should change, because there are too many people have already died for this cause.
You're muted, Kim. You're muted.
Yes, I was going to give the floor to you and to Lina on this one, because I think it's a really powerful way of, it's a powerful question, and indeed I think perhaps being an ally is not for everyone, and that's also okay.
I would beg to disagree there.
Aha, good.
And okay, so let's start by that just last statement that you had. Being an ally is not for everyone. Being an ally should be for everyone. We're talking about human lives. We're talking about the security of people. We're talking about the economic opportunities that human beings have. I'm sorry. When people want to dismiss it as it's your cause, no, it's a human being's cause. It's just that that human being happens to have something that it's the melanin in his skin that gives that person a different reality that is very much hostile in comparison to yours. And again, we go back to the beginning, what Anita was saying. Being an ally can come in different shapes, and it comes to something that is natural for you. It can be as simple as supporting an organization. It can be as simple as having conversations with people in your environment. Again, we're not asking you to go protest outside, to not at all. Just but be an ally. I strongly disagree that this is not something that everyone needs to take a small responsibility for, because again, we're talking about human lives. Now the question, when people say, well, it's getting, I don't like how things are going, it's getting too aggressive, I don't agree with civil disobedience. It's a tricky question, because I personally, I don't agree with civil disobedience, but I understand it. When your voice has been ignored over and over again, you see family members dying, or people that look like you, and you know that it's because of how you look, that is scary. And I think every human being has a boiling point, and every human being gets to a point where there's so much pain, there's so much anger, there's so much sadness that it comes out in an aggressive way. And the other is, and I agree with Anita, you're not really an ally if you want to dismiss a whole cause for a very small group of people that are being aggressive. And lastly, it's unfortunate, but it's been proven, and we see it right now with what's happening. Civil disobedience brings forward change. Simple as that.
Yeah. And I mean, what's an interesting one is, or rather to recall for everyone, so all of us are very happy to quote Martin Luther King all the time, but Martin Luther King was a person who was civilly disobedient. And same with Gandhi. Gandhi was, a civil disobedient, he was an expert at it, and that's how he managed to do change. So indeed. Lina, in terms of anything you'd say on this particular chapter?
I just wanted to come back to something that Anita said earlier about having space to breathe. And another thing that systemic racism does is take away space from anyone that is not white to have emotions. And here's another thing that we need to learn as white people, is that anyone who doesn't look like us also has the right to have an emotion, and also has the right to the space to express that emotion, and to have what is causing negative emotions being addressed. So I think here, again, we have what it takes to make this work. We can do it. And it's a matter of becoming aware of the need to make space.
Well, just to prove that we are actually watching the Facebook channels and YouTube as well. So if you have any questions, or if you want to pose them, feel free, or make even the comments, please feel free to submit them. So we would like to highlight a really interesting question which we got, which was around kind of somebody who wants to be an ally. So welcome to the cause. We need more of you. She or he, I don't know, says that they have friends who get discouraged by racism, for example, when they apply for a job. So there's essentially the anticipation that you are going to have a racist experience on the other side, or at least an experience where you're not particularly well received, and they get discouraged by that. And what the ally says is that, they're trying to encourage them to do that, to look beyond that and to still apply, but she or he is not sure that that this is the best way to approach it. How can they support this person? Our brains are all thinking, so you can say it's not an easy answer to provide.
How can they support? The thing is, it's a complex thing. It's really complex. How can they support? By telling, I totally agree that people should go for their dreams, go for the jobs they want. But it's all about how do you go there? How do you go there? Because getting there is one part. So getting in is one part. And I think try to, if you're an ally, try to create a good network with each other, and also promote your friends. If you know the kind of job there, so you promote your friends, because that also helps. And having access to a good network, I think that will help. But on the part that it's that he or she wants to give up, keep on supporting them mentally. And for your friend, tell them to look for other people of color, for a network with people of color, where they can heal, because this part is also about healing. There are so many things happening and already have happened. So this person is damaged, and this is where the healing part starts. And being a good ally starts with go and heal yourself. And that's so important. That is so important, because if you're not healing, the things like burnout, stressed out, and not being able to do the job when you do get the job, these things are also there as a threat. So go and heal. I think that's the advice they should give as an ally. Go and heal, and look for people with the same experiences. Go and heal. Look for a psychologist or a coach or whatsoever, but please go and heal yourself and help the person heal. That's where it starts. And when he or she does get the job, well, if you're going into a system that is really hard and tough, don't go alone, but take with you a very good coach and trainer who will prepare you for the environment you're getting into, because that can also be hostile. That can be very hostile. So when you go there, don't go alone, because when you're already damaged and you haven't healed, you won't make it. You won't make it.
Thanks, Anita. I wanted to take the chair's privilege, I guess, in this one as well. I want to highlight that, the systemic racism is systemic because all of society enables it to happen. So, when you have an organization and you look at if you look at your organogram in your organizations, have a look at it, think about it. So all of your colleagues, how many of them are not white? And if you're in an organization where there is not a single person who is not white, then ask, go to HR, go to your managers and ask, why is that? Why is it that we have not been able to recruit a single person who's not white? And there are many organizations where that is the case. But if nobody asks the question, then nothing will change. And to be honest, this is a question which I love to ask the European institutions, because the European institutions are supposed to be the guardians of the treaty. They are supposed to be pro-diversity and all the other things. When's the last time we've seen, and I don't think we've ever seen one, a commissioner who is not white? And so it's those kinds of things that if we don't continue to ask the question, like Lina was saying at the beginning, we have to keep asking the question again and again and again and again. Then indeed you have the situation of this person where they don't even want to apply because they know exactly beforehand what the results will be. And so that's also where, sometimes being an ally doesn't necessarily mean having to deal with the immediate problem, but it's also about creating the environment and challenging the environment, which enables that to happen. Danielle and Lina, I don't know, kind of from your perspectives, kind of, do you have any additional kind of practical tips you would give this ally in becoming, in essence?
Do you want to go for it, Lena? Because I feel I go after you. Go for it.
Actually, I fully support what Kim just said. I think this was just what I would have added also to what Anita explained. So nothing more from my side.
I don't have much to add either, to be completely honest, because I think Anita and you, Kim, both have been very succinct with it. I just listen, support your friend through it, and don't tell your friend it's not gonna happen. Please don't. Don't tell your friend, oh, that's not gonna happen. Don't worry about it. It could happen. It might not. But let them tell you how their experiences shape their perspective. So don't dismiss their perspective. And again, it just goes back to listen. And if it happens and the person is experiencing those sorts of situations in a working environment or in an interview, listen and help them heal, help them, support them. It's just, again, be empathic. Empathy is everything, people. Empathy.
Yes, and I mean, I think we put in, I think in our intervention, I think, and also in all of the roundtables before it, I think the connection with this is an emotional experience. It is on all sides. It's also why it's so discomfort, because it is such an, it really goes to the core of our being, the core of our identity, and those types of things.
Kim, just one thing. I'm so sorry, but
No,
I just remember something I wanted to say specifically. But you were saying it's questioning, like, why don't we see more diversity in working environments? Because many times then the conversation goes to, also, you just want diversity hires. Also, then we should only hire people because they're of color. And honestly, I find that we need to take ourselves out of that mentality, because we're saying that there's no people of color that are qualified for those jobs. There's plenty. And I think that is something that sometimes the conversation gets hijacked into that shouldn't be a conversation. There's plenty of people that are qualified for these jobs and they're not in these jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Anita, what do you think on that? Because I think also, particularly for, you know, we already had this problem with for women, and Black women in particular. I think you ladies,
Yes.
actually, really experienced this, actually.
Yes, and I think what Daniela said is so true. The hijacking of the conversation with, like, with an argument that isn't even really an argument. That's what's happening all the time. But the thing about that, it's a strategy. People don't want to change. That's what they're actually saying. It's a strategy. So when people tell you, yeah, but if we're only gonna hire them for their color, what's the quality? Well, it's like, it's the same argument as, we can't find them. Did you look? Did you really look? Did you look to find these people? A very simple example is, we are having press conferences here because of Corona. And one thing I was really frustrated about is, after the press conference, there always would be this talk show with white experts. And I really hated it, because I was like, if it's about discrimination, everybody can call you. If about discrimination, racism, everyone can call you. But for me, being a learning consultant, nobody will call me to come and talk on TV about that. Or for all the other experts to come and talk about that, to talk about you as a professional. And that's not only racism. And I was like, how can people be so blind and not seeing this? Am I the only one seeing it? And I only heard it from people of color, that they were like, I'm seeing the same. I know that they're seeing the same thing. They don't see us as experts from different topics, only on racism and discrimination. And that is so mind-blowing and so frustrating. But coming back on that, it's all about strategy. It's a strategy for them. And what it means for people of color or people who are experiencing discrimination, it means we have to have our own strategies. That's what it means. If they have their strategies to keep you off, to keep you away, to not having these conversations, it means we have to have our own strategies. And that's why it's also important, like, people, it's not only about these demonstrations. Demonstrations are one part. It's a start. It's a start of the fire. But we have to keep this fire going. We have to keep those flames big and high to change things. So it means we have to add something, more points to it, to keep this conversation going, and to I really hope to realize, to change. This time I really want to see change. So the demonstrations are the start. It's the first point. But we have to add things to it. So these allies, when they come in and have these conversations in their companies, so why don't we have people of color or people, diverse population in this company? Or why do some children get lower school advice? Why aren't there any people of color living in our neighborhoods? Why do I get paid more than people of color or my female coworker? Or it's all about all these things. So it's the demonstration, it's the discussion, it's changing these systems. It's about changing these systems. And to change these systems, well, I always compare it with, we have the short-term sprinters and we have the marathon. And this is the marathon, and we have to keep that in mind. And if you're running a marathon, you have to have a strategy also. And all of us, we need strategies. We need strategies. We have to think about strategies and realize these strategies. That's what we need. Yes.
No, that's but more can be said. We're going to stay with this employment use case, because I think it's a really interesting one, but also to demonstrate, it from a systemic racism perspective, the emotional perspective. And a question we were asked is a little bit kind of was around, and I think it goes back to kind of Daniela's question about, does this topic get hijacked? And often one of the places where this topic, grows into a sweltering debate on both sides is the question of quotas, positive discrimination. Yes, I'm going to bring it up. Kind of what we were asked, kind of what our views are on it, and essentially, are they different from one another? Are they counterproductive or not? How do we feel? Maybe kind of, again, using my chair's perspective, I want to highlight, when we talk about kind of gender quotas, or we talk about positive action even for gender, but also then, of course, in connection to racism, we're talking about something that if we don't do anything, the situation will stay the same for a century. And are we as a society happy with that? But that's kind of the question I would pose back to it. But maybe Lina, I haven't allowed you to speak. So how do you feel as a, because often we portray that, what this will mean is that a white person who's sufficiently qualified for this will lose their opportunity, and therefore, you could say, if there was Lina and Anita, Lina would lose, and that's not a good thing either. But it's maybe an unfair question, especially that we have now added on those dimensions to it. But how would you react to what's just been asked?
Well, first of all, I think it doesn't matter if it's Anita or Karen who gets a job. If I don't get a job, then I go somewhere else and get another job. So I think that's okay. And the question of quotas, I think, especially in Volt, we see that it works. We see that when we do like changing electoral lists, we get women who are incredibly powerful at making amazing political statements. We see that when we have like 2 lead positions for every team with 2 different genders, I think in Volt we are creating massive female leadership potential. And I think if it works with women, it can also work with any other marginalized group. So I think we should definitely do it, definitely try it. So yeah, let's do it. Let's start putting people that are not white in leadership positions.
Daniela, Anita, kind of, this question which we always, it always gets thrown in our faces, I guess.
To add to it and to expand on what you said, Kim, I think it's, if we don't do something to shake up what is already a structure, is just going to keep perpetuating itself. And I think that's where quotas come in. I will connect it back to what I said in regards to the 3 steps that ended up being 4. And that 4 step, I said, diversify your environment. Because diversifying your environment is going to allow you to question your biases, and it's going to allow you to change the perspective and just expand it and realize that this very small pool of people that you think is the world is just a part of the world, and then you have the rest of the world, and how beautiful it is that you can see all these different perspectives. And I think that's why quotas are absolutely a great solution, because it's not that someone is losing their like a job because they're qualified what the other person is qualified to. And it goes back to, this is not about we're hiring someone because of their ethnicity or their background or their gender. No, we're hiring them because they're qualified. There are qualified people in these groups, but we don't see it because we have blinders, and our structures have blinders on certain parts of the population where it's the pool in which we go to look for people to bring to working environments. Quotas allow us to expand that pool and realize, wait, I have an ocean right in front of me. I'm going to go swim in the ocean, not in the pool. And that's why quotas are great.
Yes, I totally agree with Daniela. It is necessary. And like I said before, we need strategies. And this is also a strategy you can add to our toolbox. We need this toolbox. So, and it's edit with it, put it in our toolbox, and we need more. But it's definitely an option. And yes, we need quotas. Yes.
Thanks, guys. We're almost reaching we reached the top of the hour, but I just want to cover a couple extra things before we go. Maybe as kind of a final question for all of you, and first of all, thank you, all 3 of you, for the interventions, for the 3-step program. I know it's not easy to create this as a 3-step program, but I think if those of you have been listening, it's a pretty powerful 3-step plus program, but it's certainly been powerful. But I think, as we said, first of all, there's the discomfort, then there's the discovery. You need to learn, you need to educate yourself. What would be your recommendations for resources or organizations or books or movies that you would recommend people to kind of look at, to understand kind of to understand what systemic racism is all about and what they can do to solve it, to basically define, kind of, as we were saying, to find their voice as an ally, to find their path as an ally. Lina, I mean, maybe we can begin with you. Kind of, what were your resources in your go-to documents?
So I can name 3 initiatives in Germany specifically that I highly recommend. One is called Deutsch Plus, Initiative für eine plurale Republik, and they really carve out practical tips on how do we live together in a pluralistic society. So very valuable resources there. The other one is Each One Teach One, specifically for Europeans of African descent. Also incredibly valuable resources with a very good eye also on intersectionality. And then there's also Initiative für schwarze Menschen in Deutschland. That is doing all of the work the others are doing, but also the more like historically directed work has stood out to me a bit. And then because racism is linked to colonialism, and one of the resources that brought me forward was reading Kwame Nkrumah, who is the former president of Ghana, his book on neocolonialism. Very interesting as well.
Daniela, kind of, what would you recommend? You even told me that you have actually like a ready-made document whenever your friends come up with this question.
I do. Documentaries, books, authors, organizations that they can support. But I think one of the most effective things to truly engage people first is visual things. And that's why I always ask people, start with a movie, start with a series. Because I think it's easier for people to truly connect to the humanity of these stories. Once you see a human being going through a certain suffering, maybe it's an assumption, but I think most of us are able to empathize with that, and and maybe there's an anger that maybe is lit up. There's a empathy that is lit up where you say, okay, no, this is not something that can go. And for that, you have 13th, which is a documentary in Netflix that talks about the criminalization of African Americans. You have When They See Us, which is also on Netflix, and it's a heartbreaking story about 5 children that were convicted for a crime that they did not commit, and you can see how their skin was the reason why they were blamed. Then you also have a documentary that I find to be very educational. It's Do the Right Thing, but it's not a documentary, it's actually a film, it's a movie, Do the Right Thing. And lastly, Black Panther's Vanguards of a Revolution. I think it's also a very important documentary that everyone should see. So I'll leave you with the documentary. I'm happy to post in the comments everything else, funds that people should support. There's so many organizations that are working on education, are working on prison reform, are working on political reform at different levels of our societies, and communities, like organizations that are working within small communities that you can support. But I think it's very important that we start visually so that people can truly see that this is not a, oh, here you go being a victim. This is a, there's human beings suffering, and we can do something about this because we can.
Yeah, thanks for that. Anita, kind of, what would you be your advice there?
Well, for people who live in the Netherlands, Gloria Wekker, White Innocence. That's a very good book to read. And Danielle was talking about visuals. I think Jane Elliott with her blue eyes, brown eyes experiment, to go and see that on YouTube is also very, very, yeah, I don't know what's the word, but it's because it's visual and you see what's happening. And if people are empathic enough, they will understand what's happening. But there, sometimes I'm a bit skeptic because I do see that people are not always that empathic. And that's actually also a very big problem for discrimination. But Jane Elliott, go and see Gloria Wekker, and go to oneworld.com. They've got like these articles about how to be a good ally in the Netherlands, and they've got this list of what should you do as an ally. And from there on, you get to other resources. We've got radar.com, I guess, radar.com. I'm not sure, .com or .nl. Which is our anti-racism office. They also have some sources. So it's like Danielle said, there are so many organizations who are working with this. Kick out Zwarte Piet, the Black Archives. That's a very important one because there you will find sources, but also other ways to find more information. So, and that's national and also international. And I think also I Am Not Your Negro. Go and see this movie. Go and see this movie. Yes. And this is also strategy again. Yes. I keep repeating this. We need strategies. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think the thing which I always fear the most, and I really started getting very upset, was when essentially this movement, or rather the reaction, started to look very much like, okay, so everybody's going to put their nice little Facebook profile, it's going to be all black, we did it for one day, and then poof, done. We're done this next social media trend. I'm glad to kind of see that, with clear conversations and things, that hopefully that doesn't happen. I would like to also offer kind of advice on my side. Certainly, you will have heard in Roundtable 2 that we had somebody from the European Network Against Racism, so enar-eu.org. So you've heard some examples in the Netherlands and those types, and in Germany. But if you would like to also have organizations within your own country, you can find within the ENAR network, they have members in every single country of the European Union. So check them out, get involved with them, see what they're up to, offer your expertise, offer your assistance, be part of that conversation. I think you'll find that super enlightful. I wouldn't add any more. I would add perhaps a movie, actually maybe two movies. So a movie I would add is a movie called Ghosts of Mississippi. It will make you really understand the African American experience of it. It stars Whoopi Goldberg, and I remember particularly as a teenager that it really rattled me, and I was very rattled that the rest of the day after watching it. So make sure that you're feeling good before you start watching it, because it'll really enlighten you in terms of why things are happening today the way they are. And I would also add, Netflix is a great source for a lot of these documentaries and those types of things. There is a show called 100 Humans on it, which is essentially lots of experiments involving a representative sample of 100 humans. It's North American, so it's 100 North Americans, but there's one episode where they talk about racial bias in it, which is really telling. So I invite you to check out Netflix for that, and you'll find some interesting things there, and hopefully that helps you. Anita, Lina, Daniela, thank you so much for taking the time, for sharing your experiences, for sharing your resources. If anybody wants more resources, just put a comment in response to this video. Somebody from Volt Europe will pick it up and will get in touch with us, and we'll be able to provide you further assistance. At this stage, Joe, I actually wanted to invite an additional guest star to this particular session, and that's Eileen from the Volt Europa board. You will have heard her in Roundtable 1. She had some things to say then, and now that we are reaching more or less the end of this trilogy, but with Star Wars, there was one trilogy and they ended up having two more. So we might have more of these in the future. That's my hope. But kind of Eileen wanted to kind of explain a little bit kind of how, how Volt Europe as a movement had kind of reacted to the roundtables and what they've heard, and kind of what their next steps are to ensure that this doesn't become indeed, just the next hashtag which has trended and will disappear tomorrow. So Eileen, the floor is yours. It's great to have you back.
Thank you, Kim. This is the first time we as Volt Europe have had these kind of roundtables and these kind of honest conversations about racism, but it is most definitely not the last time. In future, we as Volt, as a European board, want to continue creating these kind of spaces that are open to those who face discrimination, who are not treated equally by the system or society or both, to speak up, share their experiences and views and their opinions. Many of us have had enough opportunities to take space. Now it is our time to make space. Democracy in Greece translates to power or rule of the people. If we as Volt want to live in a democratic federal Europe in which we empower our citizens, in which democracy truly includes all citizens, then we have a long way to go. Right now, not even close to all people in Europe are empowered to participate in politics, not to mention the lack of representation. And it is also on us and part of our responsibility that we make sure everyone reaches equal opportunity and fair treatment. Something that Daniela just said that really resonated with me is that if we as individuals see and feel the pain of another fellow human, it must touch us too. It must be our issue too. So to those unaffected, we need to unnumb ourselves from systemic racism. We need to become sensitive to what is happening around us, as uncomfortable as it may be, because it is nothing compared to what Black people all around the world go through on a daily basis. And this is the kind of society I think we need to strive for, where, as discussed in the first roundtable, we see discrimination against individuals and identify it and call it out. Because as Kim said, this is where it is experienced and where the damage happens. And the truth is that racism will not end after these roundtables. I can only speak for myself, but I would like to believe that I've had some key takeaways that I will remember when I stand up to racism wherever I see it, and I hope those who watch this event series have too. What is certain is that we will repeat these conversations, and as a leadership of Volt Europa, continue talking about these issues and make a point in making this topic an issue continuously that we raise, not just now, but until we have overcome these issues. We need to write policies that tackle these issues of systemic racism, not only locally, but nationally and Europe-wide. In the last roundtable, Juliana said that this is finally the time where these conversations are being had openly and are being taken seriously, where there's momentum in our society. And we need to take responsibility as individuals to keep this momentum going. And this is something I personally will also push for. I hope you at home watching will too. We're incredibly thankful for the time and the energy and the vulnerability of those who participated in these roundtables have spent. We are aware that it is not easy and appreciate every single one of you opening up. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for sharing your personal experiences. We really appreciate it, and we will continue listening, and we will continue making space, and we will continue learning.
Thanks so much, Aline, for your words. And indeed, I think I'm so pleased and honored that Volt will indeed be carrying the mantle and really making the next step as one of the allies, hopefully, of this movement. Guys, you know, we have our 3-step plans. I hope you've got your 3-step plan. Now's the time to act, and let's all stand up together to fight racism. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for participating in these roundtables. And be safe, be well, and see you soon. Farewell, everyone.
Thank you very much.